Hey, book lovers. My name is Em, and I want to talk about books and cats. Welcome back, book lovers. So today is a special episode. Today's episode is all about the author Sarah Stewart Taylor. You may remember the name from Season 2, Episode 6, and her book, The Mountains Wild, which I have already covered and I loved so much. She is a fantastic writer. I took a chance and reached out to her, and she graciously offered to talk with me about her new book that is actually coming out next week on the 21st. It is called The Drowning Sea. And it is the third book in the Maggie Darcy series, the incredible badass detective from The Mountains Wild. I am so excited to share my interview with her, but first, let's talk about the second book in the Maggie Darcy series. The second book is called A Distant Grave. This book begins in the aftermath of Book 1, The Mountains Wild. Maggie is currently being pulled in every direction. She's trying to balance everything. She is putting 110% in at work, and she's just really in the prime of her detective work. She is kicking ass. At the same time, she is trying to help her daughter Lily through the death of her father, and she's trying to maintain a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend Connor, who lives in Ireland. So she's got a lot on her plate, and she's having a really hard time balancing it all, and I think that's fair because I think that's almost an impossible thing to balance. That is way too many things. But anyway, the body of a man is found on a beach in Long Island. It could be a robbery, a gang attack, or something else. Maggie is already on edge because a man that she has already arrested once before has been kind of poking around her house. And now that this body has shown up, it means that she has to find a way to work the case while also going on vacation with Connor, Lily, and Connor's son Adrian in Ireland. The dead man is an Irish citizen, so she actually can do some of the casework over there, but it's an added complication to her work and an added stress on her relationship. So, of course, this murder is not going to be an easy solve. There are tons of different possibilities. One of my favorite parts in this book is that there is this ever-present feeling of someone watching Maggie. For most of the book, you have no idea who it is that's watching, but you know that whoever it is, they are extremely professional. And it's just kind of creepy to have this, faceless entity watching her. The characters are so well written and complex. The emotions feel really true, and the relationships are complicated in the way that relationships are. I really enjoyed A Distant Grave, and I highly recommend both books of the Maggie Darcy series. And I'm sure that after June 21st, I'm probably going to be recommending the other one as well. I'll just throw it in there now. Just read all of the Maggie Darcy series. And check out all of Sarah Stewart Taylor's writing, because it's fantastic. I really enjoy her writing. I also really enjoyed talking to her, and after the break, I have my interview with Sarah Stewart Taylor, so make sure you stick around. I'll be right back. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I love the books and your discussions and everything you do on your Instagram. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on because I love your writing. I kind of randomly found your first Maggie Darcy book. I'm not sure how to say her last name.
Yeah, you got it. That's right.
The Mountains Wild, and I love your writing style, and I also just fell in love with Maggie's character. Like, she's such a fantastic character. So I do want to talk about that, but I kind of thought at first, can we just go back to the beginning? And I'd love to hear about your experience with books and writing as a child or younger person.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love talking about this because I think, every writer has a different journey to becoming a writer, but obviously books, is almost always a part of it. And that was certainly true for me. I grew up loving to read. I loved all different kinds of books. I read anything I could get my hands on, but mysteries and crime fiction were certainly a part of that. I read Nancy Drew, and we had some family friends who were from Wales, and they would send me, they sent me the Enid Blyton mysteries, and there were some sort of, British children's detective stories that I got to read, and
that's very cool,
which was kind of fun, and then I discovered Agatha Christie probably when I was about 12, and just loved those. And then, moved on from there to a lot of the other golden age detective novelists. As a teenager, I loved reading Dorothy Sayers and Josephine Tey and, some of those. And then I think during college and graduate school, I studied literature and creative writing. Mm-hmm. And I moved away a little bit from mysteries during those years. And I think I had, a sense of, is this really serious literature? Should I be, is this what I should be reading? But it was what I, it was what I would always sort of choose. When I could choose what I was reading, I would often choose novels with even just a detective element in them. But certainly, continued to love them. And after graduate school, I worked in publishing for a little bit and then worked as a journalist. But I always wanted to write a book. And while I was working as a journalist, I kind of decided I'm going to try to do this. And I did the sort of classic thing of waking up early before work and trying to put in a couple hours writing before I had to go to work. Yeah. And that's how I got my first novel written. And my first novel was published in 2003. And it was the first in a series about an art historian who specializes in gravestone art. And
I saw those books on your website.
Yeah, so I wrote 4 of those. My character's name is Sweeney St. George, and I wrote 4 in the Sweeney St. George series. And I loved writing those books, and I learned so much from writing them. And then I think I had kids, and for a while there, it was challenging to to write a book a year. And I wrote children's books for a while, but I really missed writing crime fiction. And so, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I started The Mountains Wild, and I feel really grateful to be kind of back in the crime fiction world. Yeah. It's not a given to be able to kind of publish again after you've taken a break. And so I just, I just feel really grateful every day that I'm back in.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I had a question about the Sweeney St. James series. How did you come up with the art historian doing like grave rubbings or whatever?
Yeah. So many, many years ago, I was in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And there was an exhibit of different items, jewelry, and I believe gloves and some other things that were used to advertise the funeral of a famous London businessman. And so it was sort of like this exhibit of, the mourning rings that were given out to the mourners, and these sort of broadsides that were advertising the funeral, and the special gloves people wore, and all these things. And I just got really interested in the idea that, art had been created for this purpose of grief and mourning. And then I was living in New England. And so I was surrounded by old cemeteries, and New England has, the areas around Boston have gravestones that you can go look at that date, really early.
Yeah. Like the beginning of our country, basically.
They're fascinating, right? Yeah. They have these really like explicit carvings of death holding a scythe and all these really interesting things that the Puritans, kind of show you how the Puritans thought about death. And so I think as I was kind of getting interested in these things, I thought to myself, wow, that would be a great occupation for a detective in a murder mystery. And that's really where Sweeney came from.
Oh, that's very interesting. So I guess I really want to talk to you about the Maggie Darcy novels, because I just love her. I already did an episode about the first book, The Mountains Wild. And I love the way that you write, and that you don't really know what's coming. Like, there's so many options. And I read a lot of like thrillers and mysteries and stuff like that. And usually there's like a couple possibilities, but you can kind of tell where things are going. And I find that your writing has at least like a couple points where there's a moment that you just don't expect to happen.
Good.
I guess, what is your process for writing those books? Like, does it just kind of happen spontaneously, or are you more of like a plot everything out? And I guess, to kind of tag onto that question, how much research goes into these books? Because they seem very detailed as far as like the detective work, and all the stuff about Ireland is very detailed and informative, and it seems like there's a lot behind it.
Good. Yeah. In terms of research, I do a lot of research, and I love doing research. Sometimes I think I like doing research too much. It's easy to kind of get stuck there, be like, oh, I need to just go look up one more thing,
Yeah.
But I do research trips to Ireland, where I spend time in the place that the book is set. And I definitely, I have law enforcement professionals, both in Ireland and in America, where, who I can ask questions
that's cool.
of and run things by them. And that's really, really important because, unlike my Sweeney series, where Sweeney was an amateur sleuth and she sort of, was detecting kind of parallel to professional investigators, Maggie is a professional investigator. And so I really need to understand procedure and hierarchy and all those things.
Right. All the politics of it.
The politics of it, exactly. So I love to do research. And in terms of, sort of structuring the plots and, red herrings and all of that, I have sort of I think of myself as a hybrid plotter and pantser, about plotters and pantsers. And, I kind of combine the two approaches. Generally, I start a book with a setting and sort of I'll have like the scene, and it's often kind of cinematic. Like, there's a scene in my head that unfolds of the body being discovered, of where Maggie comes in on the scene or the situation. And so I'll sort of have that. And I might do, especially with these mysteries, like I will have done quite a bit of setting research before I start writing, because I want to like have the atmosphere and the sounds and smells and the, what the place is like before I sit down to write.
Right.
But then generally I will just kind of let myself go, and I'll start writing and not do a lot of outlining. But then I always get to about page 50 or 60 and I need to stop and do some outline work. And, as you say, kind of start thinking a little bit about like, okay, who are all the possible suspects here, and where do they come from, and what are their backstories, and kind of start to do some of that work before going back to it.
Do you find it difficult sometimes to kind of link them all together, or do you find it difficult to kind of cast suspicion but not make it so obvious? I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say.
You're absolutely right. I think, as a reader, that's what I'm looking for in the books that I read, that I don't want to be able to guess it. Right. I want it to be, I want there to be a lot of possibilities out there, but at the same time, I want them all to feel plausible. And I want the eventual murderer to feel really plausible. And so, that's, I think in a lot of ways, that's the toughest part, like figuring writing, in a lot of ways, writing a novel it's like figuring out how much space and time to give each element.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the key thing, is like figuring out how much space on the page to give each of those characters to make it plausible, but to also, we all know, we've all had that experience where we're reading a mystery and there's a character appears.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh yeah, like red flags, warning bells, like this must be it. And it's always really disappointing then when that is it,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to know halfway through the book, like who did it or anything. The thing that I loved, so I just finished reading the second Maggie book, A Distant Grave, which I also just absolutely loved. Kind of on a side note, I love that it just started out like where they have the body on the beach, and I also like that you intersperse the story kind of from the victim perspective throughout the story, throughout the novel. I thought it was very interesting to watch his story unravel while they were kind of piecing it together.
I will say that that initial scene where she comes right in, like, responding to a body on the beach, was kind of an interesting thing, because I originally thought actually that the second book in the series would be when she goes to Ireland and she's trying to decide if she wants to move to Ireland. And as I was working on it, I just kept coming back to this feeling of, no, Maggie is a homicide detective. She wouldn't just leave. Like, something would have to happen for her to leave her job and move to Ireland. And I knew I wanted her to do that, but it felt like I hadn't sort of laid the groundwork for that decision. And so in a lot of ways, A Distant Grave is the book where I wanted to lay the groundwork. And as I started thinking about it, I was just like, I want her to just come in. I want the reader to see her like at the height of her powers, like just being a detective. And she gets a case, she catches a case, and she comes in, and it's like Maggie, it was sort of like, I just wanted like Maggie being awesome, her like doing her job, being, So that's sort of where that initial scene came from, actually, as I was thinking about it.
I really like that, because I love that Ireland is kind of this thing that's kind of pulling at her through the whole book. And like, even when she's over there, there's still this whole push and pull between her career and her daughter and her boyfriend, and just really well done. I really enjoyed it. The other thing that I really liked about it is that, going back to talking about like who did it and being able to guess, I like that there's kind of, that there's a person, like there's a certain character, but you have no idea who it is for almost the entire book. And I thought that was so great. I just really love that it's like this ever-present thing, and you write it so well, you can really kind of feel the like somebody's watching me feeling, but I love that you just have no idea for a good chunk of the book, like exactly what's going on there. I try not to say too much because I don't want to spoil the books for anyone that wants to read them, but
it's hard to avoid spoilers sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. I try when I'm reviewing the books to make it sound interesting and exciting and talk about the things I like, but without, ruining it for other people. So I guess now I would love to hear about the third book that you have coming out next week on the 21st. So tell me about that.
Here I just got my hardcover copy, so I can hold it up for you. There it is, right there.
Oh, that's awesome. Looks good.
So at the beginning of The Drowning Sea, Maggie is on a beautiful and very remote peninsula in West Cork, Ireland. And she and Connor and her daughter Lily and his son Adrian have rented a cottage on this peninsula for the entire summer. He's a college professor, and he's working on a book. So he's kind of, it's a working vacation for him. But Maggie, again, I won't spoil it, but at the end of A Distant Grave, she makes a big change in her career. And Maggie is, for the first time in her adult life, she doesn't have a day job, and she's sort of trying to figure out what's next, and really trying to figure out if she and Lily should move to Ireland to be with Connor and Adrian. And so they're in this gorgeous setting. She's, going for runs, they're swimming, they're enjoying there's a terrific pub and restaurant, and they're just kind of trying to have a vacation.
Right.
But of course, a body washes up below the cliffs of this peninsula, and Maggie sort of gets dragged into the investigation because her daughter Lily starts dating a friend of the dead man, and she becomes concerned about Lily's safety, and there's some other aspects of the investigation that kind of draw her in, and pretty soon she's investigating an old mystery centered on a possibly haunted Anglo-Irish house that's on this peninsula that's abandoned.
Oh, that's
where
awesome.
where a famous Irish artist once lived, and there's a sort of Gothic element to the book centered around this house. But then also I get into the lives of a lot of Eastern European workers who have come to Ireland and come to Cork to work.
Oh,
and Maggie, through her daughter's boyfriend, Maggie sort of gets involved with this community, and there's, there are a few different things going on, but yeah, it was really fun for me to kind of show Maggie trying to relax and not being very good at it.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what she wants her life to be, and whether Connor and Ireland are part of that future for her and Lily.
Oh, I'm so excited to read it. I can't wait. I already pre-ordered my copy.
Thank you.
So I guess just to switch a little bit, other than writing and books, what else do you enjoy? What are your hobbies?
So my family has a little farm. I describe it as a hobby farm, although it's become a bit more than that.
Yeah.
We raise sheep. So I have a flock of 13 ewes who most years, we breed, and we have a lot of lambs in the springtime. This year we didn't breed because we have some fencing projects we have to finish this summer. We've sort of outgrown our fencing. But we live in Vermont, so we're sort of in a rural part of Vermont, and have the sheep, and we have a lot of blueberry bushes that we've been cultivating, and our hope is to have a pick your own blueberry operation in the next couple of years going.
Oh, very cool.
I spend a lot of time when I think about hobbies. My husband and I have 3 kids, and we all spend a lot of time sort of just doing stuff around around. There's always something to do.
Yeah.
But we love hiking, and Vermont's a great place to sort of be outdoors.
Absolutely.
And I like gardening a lot. And I've done for work, other than writing, I've done a lot of different things. I was a journalist, and I still do some freelance journalism.
Oh, nice.
And I've taught, which I absolutely love, and I hope to get back to at some point. It's been a little busy the last couple of years, take on too much teaching, but I really enjoy teaching writing.
What age do you teach?
So I've taught mostly at the community college level, and then I taught for a while in a graduate program for cartoonists. We have a wonderful school here, not far from where I live, called the Center for Cartoon Studies. That's a graduate program for graphic novelists and cartoonists. And I've taught, I can't draw to save my life, but I've taught fiction writing and literature at that school.
Oh, that is very cool. So just a couple of questions, I guess, to wrap up. My first question is, what do books mean to you? Just kind of, I know it's a big question, but
yeah, no, it's that. I love that question. So I think as a child, they offered identification. They offered, reading about characters who felt the same way about things that I did, or who had similar experiences is just, I think, so powerful. And it's why books are so important for kids. And it's why it's so important that all kids see themselves reflected in books. Why diverse books are really important, I think, because
Absolutely, yeah.
that experience of identification is so powerful, to know you're not alone. Identification, escape. I think like as a kid, I loved just curling up with a book and like going somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
Being exposed to other worlds, other places, other, people who live differently from you is so important in books. So, definitely all of those things. As an adult, books are my career and my livelihood. And so they mean, it's like a slightly different relationship, I think.
Right. It changes it a little bit.
But they've been a real, books and writing have been a real source of connection for me. I think, I've made so many good friends in the writing world, and,
Right.
Other authors and readers, and, getting to talk to people like you who champion books and who spread the word about books, which I'm so grateful for. And I know, other authors are so grateful for that, I think for that connection with books. And still, I look to literature for connection and identity. Still that sense of identification, it's changed for me, but I love reading books about marriage and long-term relationships and parenting, right? Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like as my kids have gotten older and parenting has evolved and become in many ways more complex with teenagers, and
I've got a couple teenagers too.
Yeah, but it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's fun to read. It's fun to read about it. I think I'm definitely kind of, working out some of my own experiences in the books by giving Maggie, a teenager who she's parenting and trying to.
I love the way that relationship is written too, because it's so complex. Like the parent-teenager relationship is so complex. And I think like it's so nice to see you get the perfect parent, or like the ideal parent so often, or you get the terrible, horrible parent. And I love that Maggie is like a really good mom, but also flawed and has her own pursuits. And she's just they just feel very real. Like they're written very realistically.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to we all make terrible, terrible mistakes. It's like no matter how much you love your kids, you are just constantly making mistakes and doing it wrong. And that's part of it, and it's okay. And in the Drowning Sea, Lily starting to date is a whole other aspect of this that Maggie has to deal with. So
I bet.
That was kind of fun to write about.
So I guess my final question for you is, what is your favorite word at the moment? I say at the moment because my mind changes all the time, but.
Oh my goodness, my favorite word. Let's see. I do, it's funny, at the beginning of each year, I often will sort of like have a word that is my sort of theme for the year.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember now what mine was in January, and I can't. So, all right. So the word that I'm going to say is expansive.
Oh, nice.
I feel like I'm in a period right now where I'm trying, I think part of it is like post-pandemic, trying to just, I'm excited to just kind of like be out again and to kind of spread my wings and to do in-person book events, but also to travel and to see people I haven't seen in a long time. And I think I'm going to go for expansiveness in the next few months. So that's my favorite word right now.
That's a great word. I love it. So my listeners can find all of your stuff at sarahstewarttaylor.com.
Yes. So my website is sarahstewarttaylor.com, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter a little bit. And I'm out there, and I'll be doing some virtual and in-person events this summer for the Drowning Sea. So, definitely check, especially if you live in New England. I'm doing a lot of different events, but there'll be some good virtual ones too. So, readers can come say hello. I would love that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I really can't wait to read your next book.
Great. Thank you so much, Evan. Thank you for all you do. I really, again, I so appreciate what bookstagrammers and reviewers and readers do to help kind of spread the word about our books. It can be lonely sitting in a room by yourself writing books, and it's so meaningful when people are talking about them and enjoying them. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day.
You as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for listening, book lovers. I hope you enjoyed this episode all about Sarah Stewart Taylor. Be sure to get her new book, The Drowning Sea, on June 21st. You can pre-order it now. And check out all of her work at sarahstewarttaylor.com. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep reading.